Thank you. Seems that I'm clocked. Yes, good to be here in the Nordic-Baltic context. I will go back to, is my presentation arriving?
We're working on it.
Good. Back to the start with IUFRO. We are so small in forest research in Denmark, and InNovaSilva is the second member of IUFRO after the University of Copenhagen. It's my own private little company. Still working in forest research, but very much also in linking research to practice. And that's where we find common ground with IUFRO too. Since we are experiencing these years that silviculture, forestry, and all that is related to that, in spite that the world needs our services more and more than ever, there's also a lot of resistance towards silviculture. Also, when we're talking about sustainable silviculture, which we, after all, have 100 to 200 years of experience and science-based to rest on. So this is a huge challenge that keep me sometimes a little bit awake at night and gets me up in the morning. So we have this initiative called the Resilient Future Forest Lab, and there we want to actually do like our predecessors did to us. They initiated forest science, forest research, and they also installed these long-term silvicultural plots that we have gained so much from over the years. And with the structure and the funding we experience these days, very often with very short-term funding, we have to jump from one project to the other. It's getting more and more difficult to see how can we do some real long-term projects, plots, and gather long-term knowledge and experience from such experiments, where we do, as researchers, we do have the opportunity to actually do something that practitioners cannot do because it's too risky to do something that's too much off the daily and the mainstream operations. I think we as forest scientists have an obligation to try to leave some of that for our next generations too. So that's and that was an idea that it was not hard to actually get IUFRO interested in, since IUFRO is funded in 1892 and therefore have passed the 125 years of anniversary, and that was actually very much also what was one of the main reasons to fund or to establish IUFRO back in those days. So Resilient Future Forest Lab, science practice, linking through demonstration, science, monitoring in operational scale. And as you can see here, this is not an image from the Nordic area. This is from Central Asia. So it's a global network that we try to establish. And why is it important? Well, I've been talking about it already, but it's also very much because tomorrow for sure will be very different from yesterday. And this is something we all know very well, but the rest of our societies, of the public, of the politicians are not very well aware of what that has of consequences for something like forest and also forest management. So trying to identify some relevant innovative solutions for the future in a world that is under change for something as long-term as silviculture and forestry. And of course, what are the themes, what are the objectives that we can address in something like this? Well, they can be multiple, as forestry and forest ecosystem services are. And each and every stakeholder or participant in this Resilient Future Forest Lab have to identify their own main theme, main efforts. And it can be very much from a good and traditional one is, of course, how will we be able to produce more wood for the future, because the future will need more wood for the green transition. But it's of course also about how we can manage for biodiversity or erosion control and what have we. And basically, the Resilient Future Forest Lab has three main groups of treatments: innovative treatments versus business as usual and versus do nothing. And it's very much depending on what this conference is all about. Innovative techniques, new sensors, monitoring systems actually make it less or make it more realistic, after all, to establish something as long-term, because we can expect that the monitoring, which has been a great expense in the past, can be done much more automatically. That's what gives hope that it's actually not that unrealistic to suggest something like this. And we are active in Kyrgyzstan, Uzbekistan, and actually Estonia also joined us this spring, and in Denmark. We have two locations, just to give you an idea of what we're talking about. We have one at Bornholm, and we have one here in central part of Jutland. At Bornholm, we are on a forest site, 11 hectares I established last spring with different species mixtures. And here, this site in the middle of Jutland is a Trollerup experimental plantation by Kirkby, the Lego family. They have sponsored 120 hectares of farmland where we will be setting up a rather big experiment on the interaction between nurse crops and different species mixtures. And these species mixtures are both native species and mixtures of native and non-native species and non-native species. We have a very liberal forest legislation in Denmark that allows us to actually work with the species that I know are a bit more tricky in many of the other Nordic and Baltic countries. So if you're interested, please sign up, and we're ready to discuss this with you. Thank you. Okay.